The next item that I'm going to cover here in using e-learning or Moodle is the use of lessons, how to configure a lesson, and how to use the lesson module in e-learning. So before I go into the details of configuring it, I'm going to go over and show you what an actual lesson looks like and what you can do with specific lessons in Moodle, so that you get an overall idea as to what's possible. So for example, here we have an online course, and by the way, we use those lessons quite a bit in online courses. And if we scroll down here to one of the modules, by the way, all of these that have this little icon in front of them, those are usually lessons. So I'm going to go to one of those lessons here, let's say multiple intelligences and learning styles. So if I click on this, the lesson would look something similar to this for the students, or you can do something very similar to this, and it has a lot of flexibility in what you can do with the lesson module. So basically you can present new content, and the new content can be in text format, it could be pictures, it could be videos, a string of videos specific to a topic, and then after the student completes that video or watches this content, the student can move to the next page. And the next page can be an assessment of some form. So in this case, we have a form of assessment where the student will do some matching of the questions. And of course, I'm not choosing the right options here, so I'm just picking and just for the sake of submitting them. And then once they completed that section, you can direct the students to view additional content. So basically, you're taking them in a sequence of pages once they complete a task to move on to something else, and then assess them on that content, and then have them watch or review some additional content. For example, here we want them to go to a website, and at the end, they have to describe something. So then they move to the next page, and then in the next page we introduce new content as well, and then they end the lesson. In some other cases you could have them take, of course we saw an example of a short quiz to assess them, but also you could have true and false multiple choice questions, which is that type of quiz that you just saw, and also you could have essay questions. So I'm going to demonstrate at this point as to how do we configure one of those lessons for our course. This is an advanced feature, but yet it's a very powerful one, and if you can get to use it in your courses, this will be very valuable for your teaching experience. So what we do here is we turn editing on first in the course, and then we go to add a new resource or actually activity in one of the blocks here. So we're going to go ahead and do this in week 1. So we go here under add a new activity or resource, and then we are going to go and choose here adding a lesson. So we click on add, and at this point we need to configure the shell, or to configure, just tell the system what this lesson is going to be like and all the different parameters. We're not actually creating contents of the lesson yet. The first step is just to define, to tell the system what the parameters are. So we're going to call this lesson 1. You could post a description as well in here, but it's not necessary. This is the content that will be posted on the main page, in the main course page. So you could say review all the pieces of this lesson, you'll be assessed throughout the lesson, all that type of stuff. So then you have here the appearance section of it, and by the way, you can expand all of those blocks by using this button here on the top right. So under appearance here, you could add additional files if you wanted to, like resource files, but instead of doing it there, I'll show you how to attach files in a moment. Now, as far as a progress bar, if the lesson is going to be very complex with multiple pages and so on, you might want to add a progress bar, but it's not necessary. Display an ongoing score. This is if you have quizzes throughout the lesson after they watch or review certain pieces of material, you're quizzing them, they can see the score, how they did so far. So it's up to you to choose that, but don't enable it unless you have those quizzes embedded in it. Display a lesson menu. This is if you have multiple pages again. it's going to display a menu for the lesson. So let's go back here for a second. And in our lesson here, we didn't have a lesson menu displayed. This would be, it would have a new section here as to what the different areas of the lesson are. So if I go and enable them here, this is again a lesson that we have already configured for another course. And if I choose yes to that option and then save and display, now notice it displays us, because this lesson had only 2 pages, it displays us the menu for this lesson. So that's what that option is. In some cases, if you have more than 2 pages, it's going to be many more pieces to it. So that was just the example there. Now let's go back to our course here. The next item here, so display lesson menu, most of the time you don't want to enable it unless you have multiple pages. Minimum grade to display menu, just you can skip that. Slideshow, you can skip that option as well. And if you wanted to look through any of these options, it will give you an explanation here. Maximum number of answers. This is like if you're creating a multiple choice quiz, it's going to tell you that the default, when you choose multiple choice question, you'll have 4 choices for your answers. That's what that option is. Linking to other activities, you could make it so that it's conditional. They have to complete a previous activity before they do this one. We're not going to go into that depth at this point. And then availability. I don't suggest that you enable those due dates and deadlines and all that type of thing. However, it's up to you, but if you do, you have to keep up with those dates and times. If you choose to use availability, I would suggest that you hide it from the main course page and then enable it from there. As far as the time limit, it's an option that you can enable so that they have only a certain time to complete it. Now, under flow control here, allow students to review. It would be best to allow them to review the questions or to review the content, because again, this is just a lower level type of learning, more type of formative questions and so on. Provide an option to try a question again. That's up to you whether you want to, when you're assessing the students, whether you want them to give them a second chance to try the questions. As far as how many times to attempt the questions, if it's a just practice lesson or a low score, you can give them more than 1 try. So usually I would suggest you give them 5 tries, and then in one of the other options here, we're going to see which one takes priority, basically, which attempt takes the highest priority. Now, as far as grading, you can have those so that they are graded. You can assign points to them. Against 100 points, 10 points, like we learned for other activities. And then you can also specify as to where this falls under what category. The grade category drop down here, it will show up if you have configured the grade book. So if you have not configured it, you need to go back to the grade book and take a look at that part of the video of this tutorial, how to configure the grade book. So for now, I'm just going to put it under home assignments. Practice lesson, yes or no. If you say that it's a practice lesson, what that does is the students can tinker with it, but nothing will be recorded in the grade book. Usually we do not say yes to this option. We want it to be in the grade book. Retakes allowed. You can consider to allow them to retake it. And then the handling of the retakes. Usually it's best to encourage the students to take it as many times if it doesn't count for too much of the course grade, and usually suggest use the maximum. And then under other options here, you can check those for yourself, but we are not going to need to mess too much with this. The other option to consider is, and this is new in this release, is under activity completion, you can choose to enable this option. So you could say, mark this activity as complete after the student is required to have spent X number of minutes on it. So if you expect the students to spend 30 minutes in it, and it's a 30-minute video or whatever it is, and they're spending only 5 minutes on it, then there's potentially a problem. So you could just say it's going to be marked completed only after 30 minutes have passed. So now we are done. We click here, save and return to the course. Of course, we could click save and display. We'll choose Save and Return to the course, and we are done with all the parameters for the lesson activity itself. We have not added any new content, it's just parameters. It's very similar to configuring the quiz or the forum. So now we click on the lesson one, and there's not really much that you'll see at this point. It's asking us, now you have a lesson, but you have no content for it. So what do you want to do first? Well, we want to potentially add a content page first. So we want to add some kind of resources, something for them to view. If you want to assess them first, that's where you would add the questions. So typically you want the content, some kind of content first. So we do the content, click on Add Page Content, and then we give it a title. So we could say Defining Computers. And basically you can add all kinds of content in here. It's basically like building a web page at this point. Now you could add also, let's say you could add an image here. Now notice if this button is only one row here, you can choose to make it more than one. Now you can click here to insert an image, and then you just upload an image to your lesson by choosing a file, going to wherever your lecture resources are, and then choosing to upload the file. Of course, this is not necessarily the one that you want, but just as an example. And then you can change the parameters of the image here. I just clicked outside after I chose dimensions. I'm going to say I want it on the right hand side, and then I'm going to click on Insert. Then click OK. Now it's on here on the right hand side. You can also include here a link, so you could say review also this PowerPoint, and then you can hyperlink this toward this PowerPoint by simply selecting the text, clicking on this icon here for inserting links, and then going and locating your PowerPoint for this lesson. So notice it says insert URL. You can either post the URL from a website or wherever you may have it on Google Drive or wherever, or you can simply upload it to the system by clicking on this browse button over here. Now we click on, usually you'd click on choose upload from your computer, choose the file, and then find your lecture, and then upload it. Then click on insert. You can leave all these other options alone, and now this is hyperlinked. You can make it bold. That suggests that you make it bold. And by the way, you can insert PDF files, study guides that same way as well. That's what they do in some of the courses. We put a study guide linked in that area. Now, after you review all of these, also watch this video. And you can go into YouTube and get a video and post the link over here. So if we go to YouTube here and pick one of the videos, whichever you want, or whichever applies to your lesson, of course. Now, there are a couple ways to insert the video. The easiest one is to copy the URL here. We go to our lesson here in e-learning or Moodle, and then we simply paste it in here and hit enter. And then the system will actually build the video or display the video right there. Or the other option is that you could hyperlink it, highlighting the link, and click on insert. And there is a third option to actually embed it using the code from Google as well. So I'll try to show that in a moment here. So then you could have additional instructions in there. Then the next thing here, it's saying content 1 in the bottom, and this is kind of confusing. It's just going to put a button there in the bottom. So what do you want that button to say? You could say, I want students to click on next page, or you could say continue to next page. So basically, this is just a control button. That's what this content 1 is. Of course, you can link to different pages and so on. You could say there lecture 2, and then students click on it, it takes them to lecture 2. Then this item here right below it, it's saying jump. It's saying, where do you want to jump? When the student clicks on continue to next page, what do you want the computer to do? So you say, I want them to move to the next page. Or you could have it them move to a specific page within your lesson. So typically, you just choose next page. So these are the two most common options here. Now you have also content 2, 3, and 4. This is pretty much more to confuse you. I'll just ignore those for now. They are a little bit more advanced, but it's for more buttons at the bottom of the page. So then we click on Save Page here. And at this point, we have configured the first part of the lesson, or we have configured the lesson with just one page of content. And to review it, you can go here under Review, and this is how it will show up. So it's the students will click on it, it will bring them up to this page. They will not have these buttons here, edit and all that stuff. Actually, let me demonstrate what it looks from the real student's point of view. So the student will go to the lesson, they'll see this. These directions, they have an image here. Of course, they don't go together here at this point, but they have access to the PowerPoint. They can click on it and download it. And then they can view the YouTube video. By simply clicking on it, it will be streamed from this page.
Pockets.
And then the students will click, this is that button, the content button that we looked at earlier. They'll have a button for continue to next page. And at this point, it's saying that you have reached the end of the lesson and so on and so on. So let's go back here to our configuration in our course page. And now let's say we want to edit this page. So one of the options is here on the top right, it says Edit Page Contents. Or there is also this Edit button here for editing the whole lesson. Edit Page Contents, it's going to allow us to edit only this specific page that we are working on or looking at. So we click on Edit Page Contents, and now we can tinker more with this page if we wanted to. So let's say I don't like that image there anymore, and I want to leave just the PowerPoint, and I want to leave the YouTube video. Then click on Save Page, and it's updated and live and ready to go. Now, the next thing that you can do is that you can go into this lesson and add additional items to it. So you can add a short quiz. So let's learn how to add a short assessment quiz to this lesson. It will be all bundled as part of the lesson, not as a separate entity like we discussed earlier in quizzes. So to add a short assessment quiz for this lesson, we can click here under Edit, the Edit tab here, and now it's displaying that we have already one page for this lesson. Now we want to add a new page. Now at this point it's asking us, well, what kind of page do you want to add? We want to choose a question. It's going to be some kind of form of assessment. So we click on Question, and then it will ask us what type of question we want to ask or utilize. And typically you would want to use true and false, multiple choice, and also you can have these other types as well, such as essay questions as another common one. So let's learn first about multiple choice. We click on Add a Question page after we choose multiple choice. And now it's going to give us the choices or the entry to create the multiple choice questions. We say computers. We type the title. That'll be the title for the students to see and also for the computer to record it, but then we need to copy and paste the question. This is what the student will actually see as part of the question. Then it's asking us, well, what's option 1? So we say a computer is any device that performs the following functions. So we say accepts input. You could give them an automated response, and this is, by the way, highly recommended that you do when you're configuring those quizzes. So you could say that is correct. However, I'm going to copy this. And then we are saying here, if the student chooses this option A here, or this answer, what do we want it to do? We are saying, okay, jump to the next page. But then, do we want to give them a grade for it, like a score for it? In this case, we'd say, no, that's not the correct answer because there are more pieces for it in order to, this is only one piece of the puzzle for a computer. So then we said processes data. That's option 2. So that's again part of a multiple choice question. And then you could give them some kind of instant feedback as soon as they choose this option. This is what will show up, and you can customize that. Now it says here jump to. you always want to make sure that it jumps to the next page. And at this point, there is no option to make that the default, but you need to make sure that as soon as the student chooses this option, you want them to be able to move forward to the next page in the lesson. As far as the score, if this were the right answer, we'd give them a 1 here, or some kind of score. Now, this is still not the right answer. Now, the next option here is stores data. And you give them some feedback, and then you say next page, and still they don't get this is not the correct answer. And then answer number 4. You give them some feedback, and you say it's next page. Again, this is very important, and there's still no score here. We need one more option here. It's not going to be just 4 questions here, but we need to add an additional option. And this is derived from the lesson configuration. So we need another choice because my multiple choice is going to have 5 choices. So I'm going to click on Save Page here, and we need to tinker with the lesson configuration for just a second here. We're going to go here under the Edit Settings. And if you're not going to have more than 4 answers for your multiple choice, you don't need to worry about this. You can skip the next minute here. We'll go here under Edit Settings for the lesson. And this is, by the way, how you can change the settings for your lesson. And if we go here under Number of Answers, we want to change this to 5. And go back, Save and Display. And then we want to go and edit that question that we created earlier. So we click here on the Edit tab. And then we click here on Multiple Choice Question, and we want to tweak it or change it. So we want to click on this gear icon to configure it and edit it. And then basically we go back to add answer number 5. So answer number 3, it's this one, stores data. Answer number 4, and then option number 5 is, and you could say that is correct. And then we click here under next page, and then we choose the score here. The score can be anything higher than 0. So you could make it 5 points depending on how difficult the question is. So one of the questions could be 5 points, another one could be 2 points, another one can be 15 points. Now those will be calculated against the total for that lesson. So if you said in the lesson configuration it's going to be graded against 100 points, then if this is 10 points, that's going to be 10% of this lesson. If it were 5 points, that would be 5%. So the percentage here would be against the score for that lesson. Then we click on Save Page, and at this point we have 2 pages to our lesson. To preview it, you can click here on Preview, and the student will see the first page here, have to watch the video and so on. Then they have to continue to the next page, and then they have to take this short quiz and then press Submit. As soon as they press Submit, they'll get the feedback that is correct and so on, and they'll continue. Let's learn about true and false questions. So we go here under Add a New Page under the Edit tab for the lesson, and then we choose another question here, and then we'll say true and false. Add a question page. We give it a title. So here for correct response we put true, and if they choose a true option here, the true response or the correct response, this is what you can put as feedback, automated feedback. And if they choose the correct answer, also this is how many points you're going to give them. Make sure that this says next page, and then if they choose the wrong answer, which would be false, then you can give them feedback automated, and then also you can choose the path here. So you always need to make sure that it's the next page. And then if they choose the wrong answer, they will get a 0 for this question. So then we click on Save Page, and then so far the lesson has 3 pages. Now in lessons you can also do and add a page which would have an essay question, and also you are presenting content at the same time. So the way you do that is by clicking on Add a New Page, and then choose Question, and then you could say here, I want to create an essay question. Add a new question page, and then at this point we'll be able to give it a name here, and then in here you could put all kinds of directions. So you basically could put all the content that we presented on the first page, you could post it in an essay question, provided you want them to answer an essay question. You put basically the directions in there, link to PowerPoint like we did earlier. You could put a link to a YouTube video if you want them to watch the YouTube video. And then you could say, before proceeding any further, and you could of course make this bold and formatted with different colors and all that type of stuff. And then we are saying here that when we grade this, by the way, we have to grade this usually. So let's say we're going to grade it against 15 points. Then we click on Save Page. So that'll be the score for grading for this part of the activity. Now, so far we have 4 pages to our lesson. By the way, most faculty, they would use only this last option that I showed here, which would look something like this. Basically, the student clicks on the lesson, you present the directions for it, the student has to respond to it, and so on. Or look under the preview option here. It'll look like this. That's the last page. Actually, that's the first page. Then they come to the next page, which would be the quiz. Then they answer another short quiz here. And then this is the last page where you're presenting the content and the student has to type an answer here and then submit it. So that's basically how it will work, and this is how it will look for the students.